Okay, first off, I'm going to be very open and honest and real about my experiences with attempted suicide. So if you've had a loved one, lost to suicide, or, you have issues with yourself, it might be a bit touchy of a subject for you if it's a trigger. So I like starting off, it's easier for me to remember when I was young, and I work my way up as I get older. So I'll talk about my first experience, and I talked about it in my bullying video that I did. I was 13 the first time, and it was from growing up, having low self-esteem from being bullied. And like I stated before in that last video, being bullied at home and at school. So the verbal abuse, the mental abuse at home that I went through, and then being bullied at school, you believe that you're worthless, right? And you believe, I don't know, you're left out at school. No one wants to pick you, to play with you, and, you feel very lonely. And, yeah, just years of that, by the time I was 13, and I said this before, is I tried strangling myself with the belt. And that was the first kind of attempt, but I stopped it from happening. The biggest thing for me when I turned probably the next real actual attempt that I did, I was 23 years old. And I think from growing up, I moved around a lot. So on top of, being bullied and picked on, I could never make solid friends because every year we moved around from school to school, to school. I went to 12 different schools jumping around. So for me, the hardest thing in life was the loss of a loved one. I really struggled when I lost my children in a relationship, when I was 25, losing that first real relationship of being in love and never having that my entire life, of feeling that type of love for someone and then getting it back and losing it was probably like the hardest thing I had to go through. On top of it, I did a lot of drugs when I was younger, so that played a role in it as well. So I did a lot of coping through using drugs. I didn't realize it until later in my 30s that I have a severe depression disorder. So I had trying to deal with depression and not knowing I had it most of my life. It got me to that point of wanting to kill myself. And I know that first time I cut my wrist open, and, I ended up going to the hospital. So that was the first time. They actually had me in there for depression, but they never said I had depression. They blamed it on the drugs that I was using at the time. So that was the first real time for myself, was when that really hit me hard, was losing my child, not being around him all the time anymore. Just losing loved ones, period, for me has always been the hardest thing for me when it comes to falling off into depression. More in my 30s when it actually, because I've had 12 suicide attempts. Now, when I'm going to talk about my 30s, I'm not putting any blame, if my exes see it or family members or whatnot. There's no blame for anything that they did. I had my own issues, and it wasn't their problem that, I had my depression disorder. But, I have to explain what set me off to go down the slope I went down to have all those suicide attempts after. And, all within 2 months, before I moved to Edmonton from Fort Mac, within 2 months, I met my ex-fiance, and she was 5 months pregnant when I met her, and I became her daughter's father. So even when we broke up, I was remaining her father, and, a year later, it was hard. She wasn't letting me see her, and I didn't know why. And she ended up telling me that, the new relationship she was in, she didn't want me to be the dad and confuse her anymore because the new boyfriend wanted to be the father. So for me, that was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to deal with, is losing, I basically lost my daughter. I couldn't see her no more. So that happened. The next month later, my other ex, she moved away. And I always had my kids on my days off, or I tried to as best as I could. So I had my little girl, and then I had my youngest son. And my ex wanted to move away, and she promised me that, on my days off, she would fly my son to come see me on my 6 days off, because her boyfriend at the time was a pilot, so they could just fly them back. And I said, yeah, no problem. Well, when they moved away, her boyfriend quit her job. So now I couldn't see my son no more. That same month, I ended up hurting my back. A disc moved in my back. I was in pain all the time, which meant I couldn't work out at the gym anymore. And that was my biggest thing to help me with depression in my life, is the gym. That happened. I ended up losing my job that same month. I ended up going bankrupt that same month as well. And I don't know, there is one other thing I can't remember right now. Everything within 2 months that made me happy in my life was completely stripped of me. So I was at that point, the feelings that you go through is you just don't understand why all these bad things happen to you. And it became really hard to deal with trying to understand. And I didn't want to live anymore. It was the worst thing I ever went through. It was like losing everything that made me happy was gone. So I ended up moving to Edmonton, and I had planned to rack up all my credit cards, to go party, sell everything I had, and do a lot of drugs, and end up committing suicide. That was my plan. So over that course of time, when I first came here, I got into, I met the wrong people. I started selling drugs. I started selling drugs, and it got really bad. I started selling crack. I started selling ketamine. I started selling E. I started selling a lot of stuff. Now, when I was selling all that, I started to use it. And that completely numbed the pain I was carrying after losing basically my entire life that was stripped from me. I fell really hard into the drugs, and I had a lot of different suicide attempts all throughout that time. Most of the time I would sit there when I was coming off the drugs, and I would just cry and cry, because I didn't know why I deserved to lose everything in my life that made me happy. And I basically turned into a junkie, which is a sick person who needs help. I had a lot of different attempts. I don't know if I should really get into the attempts, but like gassing myself, ODing on pills. My mom, I feel horrible for what I put my mom through, because even when I was staying with her, I remember one of the attempts, I took 80 to 100 Valiums, and they were all extra strength. And she ended up coming home, seeing me laying in piss on the floor, not even breathing, or I didn't look like I was breathing. I ended up waking up in the hospital, as I did with all of them. None of the attempts that I ever did out of that whole, about a year and a half worth before I turned my life around 8 years ago now, none of those attempts worked out, and I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful that none of those times ever worked out. I know a lot of people have lost loved ones to it, and I can't imagine, out of all those attempts, of one of them actually working and me getting, what I thought I wanted at that time, to have my family go through that. So anyways, from that, I guess what turned around after that year and a half is my last attempt, again, was ODing on pills, taking a shitload of pills. And I ended up getting a minor stroke from it. I woke up, I was actually outside on a field, and I thought, I'm just going to look at the sky, the clouds. It was a nice day. I swallowed all these pills. I ended up waking up the next day with sunburn all over my face. My hair was a mess. I looked awful. I was only like 200 and maybe 20 pounds, and I'm 280 now. So it's a big difference from how I looked right now. And, during that time, my family didn't want me around. I was a different person. But my mom, seeing me, I went to her house. I could barely even talk. Half my body, I couldn't even move. She allowed me to come stay in her house. And it was from that point when I ended up sitting on the recliner. And I remember I couldn't speak, but I was like falling asleep. And I was having a conversation. And I know it was a spirit that was next to me. And we had a conversation. I don't remember what it was about. But it was the next day after that I started treatment, and I started to make a difference in my life. And I spent 6 months in treatment, and then a year in sober living after that. So I've been good for the last 8-9 years now, and the drugs was a big part of it for me that put me into severe depression. But yeah, I'm trying to think now. So yeah, it was 8-9 years ago. So actually 4 months ago, or 5 now. And I should talk about it because I like being open and I like being honest, because I know it's only going to help people. But like my last one was actually 5 months ago, and over the years, I've learned to have supportive people in my life I could talk to. I stayed away from the drugs. I stayed away from the drinking that would put me into depression. But during the winter months, the things that normally, I met my ex-girlfriend. She smoked weed all the time. Slowly, I started smoking weed again. And I know weed helps people with depression and anxiety. But for myself, and I can only speak for myself, is that when I start smoking weed again, it actually, when I'm not smoking it, I start getting depressed, and it starts putting me more into a depressive state. So, I was smoking weed with her again. I stopped the gym. She didn't go to the gym, and I'm not blaming her for anything either. I take responsibility for all my actions. But I stopped going to the gym, which is a big part of my life to help fight depression. The pills I normally take for my ADHD, I wasn't taking anymore. I do shift work with my city job, which I'm not doing anymore because I can't sleep. My sleeping schedule goes off. I'm not sleeping when I'm working days, or when I'm working night shift. I can't sleep for a full week. So slowly that starts to catch up to me. Sleeping is important, obviously. What else was there? Those major things for me anyways, that I learned to keep on track with. When I'm doing my shift work at work, it throws me off completely, where I've learned to live my life with structure, and I've lived to learn it with routine. So that throws me off. So we ended up with my ex, my last one again. It was the first relationship in probably 10 years where I absolutely adored someone, and I loved them, and I did everything for them. We got into and you shouldn't text when you get into arguments over the phone, but it wasn't even an argument, but she took things the wrong way. And she's had a lot of bad relationships, and she took what I said completely wrong. And so then, we ended up breaking up. And again, it goes back to me losing a loved one and having a hard time trying to cope and deal with it. And, I normally have my support group, which is my family. But at the time, they were upset with me as well. So I really didn't have my support group there. And I'm not blaming, them as well for anything. But the things that I always had, set up to keep me doing well, it all came crashing down on me. And Emma, stop, please. And what was my point now? Here's my ADHD kicking in. What was our point now? Fuck. Just give me a minute. It will come. It will come to me. My God. See, these are my pills I'm waiting for to kick back in so I can stay on track of what I'm talking about. Yeah, I can't even remember now. Okay, so wait, now let me come back to what I wanted to talk about. Shit. Anyone watching can remind me? Fuck. This is horrible. Okay, I remember now. So, here's Rachel. Okay. My point I remember now I was trying to get to is what caused me to try to commit suicide that time. With all of that stuff that happened. Emma, get down here. Okay, sorry, I can't read this either at the same time because it messes me up. I'll read the comments after. Shoot. Now I lost my track of thought again. It was about my last time trying to commit suicide. Yeah, I can't even remember now. My breakup, yeah. I know, it's my cat that's running around and then completely threw me off on what I was even trying to get out and talk about. She's running around being crazy right now. Okay, well, I'm just going to talk about my last suicide attempt on what I did. And I guess it's going to bring me the point of, my last suicide attempt completely changed my life. 180 degree, going down a completely different path altogether. And it's why I'm able to be so open and honest about where I'm at today, because it's changed me big time. So the gist of it for my last one is I tried gassing myself again, 5 months ago because I couldn't handle all that had happened. Emma, I couldn't handle everything. So I tried gassing myself. Now, I remember from years ago, I thought to myself, this time I'm going to do it right, because I didn't do it right last time. And seriously, in the room, come on. You can't be up here. No. Oh, shit. She's completely throwing me off. That attempt, that last one, I was actually in a vehicle for 5 hours. Thank God it didn't work. Because I ended up having a near-death experience the last time where it was very real and I wasn't allowed to die. And I had to stay alive, and I have to do what I'm doing now. Yeah. See, now I'm losing my train of thought again. I'm so horrible right now. But anyways, the gist of it, I'm very connected spiritually now with energy. I've been put on this path to continue and to try to help people with different mental health aspects that they might live through in life. I don't really want to get into that too much because it's going to veer off to what I was trying to talk about just with the suicides. I know the hardest thing for me is they always tell you to call people. If you're feeling suicidal, call someone. I was the type of person that I can't even give an answer on how to, because I'm the one who will isolate, and I won't call anyone. I'm too ashamed of how I'm feeling, so I won't ask for help. And I know that if people are having a hard time, you should be calling or letting your friends know, asking for help. But myself, I could never do that. Yeah. So I don't know how this helps, but I feel compelled that I have to do it. and tell my story on things that I've been through. And, from the feedback from the other videos I've done with the messaging that I've done, or the messages that I've given, I get a lot back in return. And in return, the strength that you guys give me that do watch it and I do help, I appreciate it very much. It makes a difference in my life, making a difference in yours. So I have another friend, Rachel, because I like to have a girl's point of view as well on what she went through. She's going to come on and talk about her experiences with suicide attempts. If she could join, can you join, Rachel? Let me see how she can join again here now. Oh, there we go. Add. Next time I'm leaving the cat in the room.
Yeah, can you see me?
There we go. Thank you.
Hi, and you're doing a fabulous job. It's hard when you get sidetracked by something.
And it's always animals. My cat ends up going crazy, running around the place, and it completely throws me off.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of, I tried to explain as best as I could, the things that I went through with my feelings, emotions, and whatnot. Hopefully it will help someone in some way. And I know you have a different story, and that's what I love about having a female on, is so that others can hear, a female side of what a woman may go through as well from your experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about your life now, so I can stop talking and drink some water.
Okay, yeah, sure. So thanks a lot for asking me to be on. And I'm a little bit nervous now because now I see that it's showing up in my live feed as well. And there's probably a lot of people who have absolutely no idea that I went through this. So anyway, here it is. I was in my early 20s, and I think that my daughter was probably about 5 years old, but I had finished college, and I graduated with good grades. I played volleyball in college. I have lots of friends. I always have lots of friends, and lots of people around me. But I had a lot of debt because of an ex-husband. I had been abused severely, sexually, emotionally, and um, physically as a child. And so I just had a lot of feelings that I had never dealt with. I felt completely lonely, and I had a really good job out of college. I sold commercial insurance, and I had so much debt just in my life that um, I was so excited about making a sale, and it was a sale that was gonna like change my life. At least that's what I thought at the time. And it failed. It didn't go through. And then within the matter of weeks, the guy that I was dating at the time broke up with me. So that was, I felt like that was horrible. And of course, I always feel like I'm not doing good enough to things in my life. I'm not doing well enough to make my family proud, or um, maybe I think that I just should always be doing better or doing more. But anyways, I lived in an apartment, and I went to the bathroom and started taking pills, and I just kept taking and taking and taking pills and drinking alcohol. And I woke up the next day, so it was definitely a failed suicide attempt. Which when you fail at suicide, it doesn't make you feel any better about yourself, right? Because then you're like, for Christ's sakes, I even failed at this. Like, what the hell, you know? And the good thing about it, though, is that I didn't fail, and I ended up going to a mental hospital, and I stayed there probably for about a month, and a lot of issues, talked to them a lot of things I had not talked to anybody else about before. Thank God for my parents because my parents kept my daughter for me while I was in that situation. And I learned so much. And kind of like what you're saying, after that happened, it was like I was almost like a whole new person because I knew how to deal with things differently. I knew how to deal with some of my emotions. I had opened up to my parents and mostly just my parents. There's still some of my family who doesn't know everything that went on, but just opened up to them about some of the abuse that I had experienced and gave them an opportunity to tell me, that none of that was my fault, which I didn't know
Mhm.
at that time. But just some of the feelings I think that I had during that time period that I was going through was just, I felt like a loser. I felt completely hopeless. I felt like the debt was never going to go away. Like there was no way I was ever going to be able to pay off anything or to provide for my daughter. And I just knew that I was always going to be doing everything by myself and that I just felt like everybody would be better off without me here, which is
Mhm.
totally not true at all. But I just felt worthless and all of those things. And so I guess I'm really glad that you asked me to be on here because one thing that I do want to do is encourage you that when you're in a time period, that's all it is a time period. And the struggle is really real right at that time. But it's like what you're saying, if you can stick to your routines and you can get help and talk to somebody and you can, for me, I weight lift and I do triathlons and I run and that's how I deal with feelings that I don't know what to do with, other than
Mhm.
talking to someone. But I just want to encourage you that it's only a time period and that it will get better and that you just have to continue to breathe and put one foot in front of the other and just make the next right choice.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was helpful, Jeff,
Of course it
but I
was.
appreciate you allowing me to share my story. And depression is a real thing, and feeling of suicide is a real thing. And sometimes also, just because you think that you know someone and how perfect you think they might be, or how awesome you think they are, or how much they always have a smile on their face, like I
Yeah.
do, um, sometimes there's things that are going on the inside that you can't see.
Yeah.
So always, always be the person who's going to encourage someone and
Yeah.
who's going to be a positive light in someone's life and to just not think that everyone has it all together because most people I don't think
No,
have
they
it
don't.
all
No.
together. So
No.
so
No.
I hope that was what you were wanting and
No, I just wanted you to tell your story, and that was 100% awesome. I know, no,
yeah,
I know a lot of people are going to appreciate it, right?
yeah.
A lot of people. So,
Well,
and
thank
I know the
you.
biggest thing for depression, if you're going through it, is definitely seeking help through a counselor, or
Absolutely.
if you're not sure what to do, then they have those 1-800 numbers and they'll guide you. If you're too afraid or if you feel ashamed to actually go in to try to talk to someone because you seem weak, um, calling these 1-800 numbers, they're only going to guide you down the right path to get you where you need to be successful and not going through the severe states of depression,
Yeah,
that we go through.
that's absolutely right. And you're not alone. Like sometimes you just
Yeah.
feel this overwhelming feeling of loneliness. And I guess I just want to really encourage people that you think you're alone, but you're really not alone. There's so many people who care about you and who love you and who if you were gone tomorrow, they're gonna care. Because you might not even know the lasting impacts that you make on someone else's life. So,
Yeah. Especially, if we were successful, I've seen other families that have lost people from suicide. And like, I can't even imagine myself putting my children and my immediate family and friends through that pain and torture, because some people see it as, oh, they're just selfish. They don't understand, you know, when someone has severe depression because they've never experienced it. So, you know, that's in all walks of life. If you haven't experienced something, it's easy to put judgment on people. But when you've actually experienced it, you know, you probably wouldn't be so harsh on judging people. Thinking it is selfish in a way, but they don't understand the mental health aspect of what someone goes through to get to that state to try to like take their own life. Because like you said, it's awesome. You know, it's only during that time when you feel that way, because out of all the times that I've tried before, it always got better. And I was always grateful that I got the help that I needed then, to get past it all, you know. And I'm very grateful today. And that's why, like in my life today, even the smallest things that people don't realize to be grateful for, I notice, you know, as much as I can throughout my day, because I'm grateful to still be here. And, you know, with what I'm doing now, trying to help others. And yeah, so, and I'm so appreciative of you coming on and doing this today, because like I said, I know a lot of people appreciate you. And yeah, we're very grateful for you as well.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I'm gonna shut her down now.
Okay.
I gotta go do my cardio at the gym on stairs for 40 minutes. So thanks everyone for watching, and hopefully we helped you in some way. That was the whole point of doing this, because I myself get anxiety, and I'm sure you had a bit of anxiety coming on here talking about your life as well. So it's, you know, it's pretty huge in trying to help others. So thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you guys later.